Alright guys, so do I have a comparison for you today? It's between the old king of stock Android and the new king of stock Android. I am of course talking about the Nexus 6P from Huawei and the Pixel from Google and HTC. Yeah, that's right, the HTC was actually behind a lot of the Pixel. I've decided to compare the standard size Pixel versus the 6P sheerly because of the prices and the fact that they're similar. Just to preface, the known areas of breaking are the back glass areas, but of course that should be fairly obvious when you see the design. I personally never had a problem with this design, but I just want to give you guys a heads up. The Nexus 6P, a phone that really grew on me, came out in September of 2015, which makes it 17 months old as of this video. The average is between £200 and £300 for the base model, depending on the condition and colour that you want. This is quite contrasted by the age and price of the Pixel, which averages between £475 and £600 on eBay, and came out in October of 2016, which means it's only 6 months old. If you want the Pixel brand new, it's actually going to cost you $599 on Google's own website. The designs are similar-ish, I guess you could say. Both use a combination of metal and glass on the back, and both are made solidly. Both devices have flat sides, glass panels on the top of the back, rear-placed fingerprint scanners, and both feel good in the hand. The only thing I'd say is that the Pixel is a tad too light for me and feels almost like a toy. I know that's a huge contradiction because it feels tightly made, but it feels too light for my liking. I adored the build quality of the 6P, which felt like a real chunk of metal in your hand, basically because it was. Both devices have larger than normal chin and forehead areas, the Pixel to make symmetrical and the 6P to house those awesome speakers that I'll talk about in a little bit. The designs can be polarizing on both phones because they aren't your standard glass all over or metal all over designs. They're not quite sure what they're doing. I personally do like the 6P's visor at the top and prefer it to the slab of glass on the back of the Pixel, but I'd have preferred one or the other. I did like the 5-inch smartphone because it was easier to palm, and for people with smaller hands it's a much easier ergonomic design. It was refreshing though, because using a 5.5-inch phone as a daily for a long time, going to something smaller which was more easily one-handed was awesome. The 5.7-inch design on the 6P is also quite good. It does have slightly larger screen to body ratio and feels like a real unit. Also, you do have those speakers, and overall the builds are fantastic on both of these phones, which they should be for this amount of money. The screens on these bad boys are very different. The Pixel is rocking a 5-inch 1080p AMOLED display, which looks pretty damn good. It also gets pretty bright in daylight and was really good when we took it out to take photos for a day. I think it looks great personally. The size is pretty good because it caters for people who like bigger phones and people who like smaller phones. So it's only 0.5 inches smaller than your OnePlus 3 and only 0.3 inches bigger than your iPhone 6 or iPhone 7. So it's a good in between. It being AMOLED is super good, with the black pixels not being lit and the amazing contrast too. This can be also said for the 5.7-inch display on the 6P though. The AMOLED technology is fantastic and it gets bright, but it's also quite a lot larger. I personally prefer the larger phones for my daily because I watch a lot of video. I'm also not the best when it comes to my site. I prefer larger UI elements. My mate Harry actually prefers bigger phones so he can cram more elements on there and be easily read. So I guess it's whatever floats your boat. Both of these screens will do you great for everyday use. I'd go with the 6P's 5.7-inch display, however. That is just my favourite and that's just preference. That's not down to it being better at all. The camera on the 6P is great. The camera on the Pixel is absolutely fantastic. Let's go back to the 6P then. This thing has a 12 megapixel sensor and f2.0 glass. Wait, hang on a minute. Alright, so change of plan talking about the specs. The GSM Arena page for specs for both of these devices are pretty much exactly the same. I do need to talk about electronic image stabilization on the Pixel though. It seems a little too smooth, almost like a gimbal. I don't think it's quite the OIS replacement that some people hoped for, but I think it's good enough. The images coming from the 6P are great, but I haven't got a backup of those, so I'll just have to leave a link to some in the description. As for the Pixel photos, I got a buttload of those. Here are some videos and photos from the incredible camera. I'm kind of confused because I can't tell if I was just in the right place at the right time or something, but I just love the dynamic range on this thing and I love the photos it produced. They can both shoot pretty awesome 4K video at 30 FPS and 720p at 240 FPS too, so you're getting that high frame rate video too. The front facing cameras on these bad boys, again, they're the same on paper. In practice, they don't really compete against the Samsung cameras for me because I prefer the super wide angle lens. I do like the 8 megapixel sensors on both of them though, because they do shoot 1080p video. They are on the better side of selfie cameras due to that high resolution. You're actually going to get quite a crispy shot compared to something like a 5 megapixel Samsung camera. The performance on these two is really good. The 6P is running last generation Snapdragon 810, which is still a pretty decent and powerful 8-core chip that has been known to run quite hot and thermal throttle. I mention this because it's a metal chassis and so the phone can feel quite warm when playing a lot of games or something extensive like that. The thing can play games and watch videos absolutely no problem and will run your social media apps apps just fine, even extensive camera use is alright, and it doesn't crash or bug out. The Snapdragon 810 paired with 3GB of RAM is more than enough for stock Android. Performance on the Pixel, well, that is something else. This thing is absolutely rapid. Maybe even as rapid as the iPhone 7? I mean, this thing is quick. It's incredibly snappy around the OS, and multitasking is a breeze. Is this due to the fact that there's a new Snapdragon 821 and 4GB of RAM, or is this thing just super good? I think it's a good combination of the software and the hardware. I loved being able to switch between apps and run around the OS with no crashes or hiccups. It was the best experience I'd ever had with any phone in terms of performance. Maybe similar to the iPhone 7. Games, social media, using the camera, watching video or anything, it all works flawlessly on this device. Moving on from hardware, the reason you would want to buy these phones is for the software. You're getting stock Android on both and I love it. The way that everything just works is refreshing. I really like the material design and the aesthetic on Nougat, which is available on both by the way. I do love the integration of the swipe down on the fingerprint scanner on the Pixel because I'm childish. The Google Assistant was pretty useful too for those who use it. I used it maybe twice in my 2 weeks of having the phone. Wasn't my cup of tea, but then again neither is Siri, so that's just me. The Assistant was accurate and useful on those 2 occasions that I did use it though. The battery life on the 6P was subpar when I had it, but I was using it very heavily. Once I changed everything to black in the background and the menus, the battery life increased significantly. Thank the AMOLED display for this. I also played a decent amount of games on it, and so I think that was to blame. I'd see between 3 to 5 hours of screen on time depending on what I was doing, and you know, for the spec heads it had a 3450 mAh battery, so it's above average but nothing special. As for the Pixel, it sports a 2770 mAh battery and is quite good. As good as a 6P is, I would say, and I believe this is down to the fact it has a 5-inch 1080p panel and more power efficient Snapdragon 821 system on the chip despite the 700 mAh battery deficit. Speaker on the Pixel isn't incredible because it's a bottom firing affair that's just about as good as any other bottom firing setup. However, it's good enough for watching, you know, Jamie Oliver and cooking yourself something nice, but listening to your favourite tunes might be a bit of a stretch. The 6P on the other hand has a fantastic pair of speakers. That's right, a pair of speakers. I never really knew how good they were until I actually had to go back to the OnePlus 3, which had a bottom firing affair. They're stereo front firing, which means that when you're watching videos at the very least, they sound absolutely incredible. I mean, granted they won't replace your KRKs, but they'll do a much better job than 99% of other phones. Both devices have headphone jacks and both have Type-C ports, but they do use different protocols. The 6P uses USB 2.0 and the Pixel uses USB 3.0, which means faster transfer speeds from the Pixel to your computer and vice versa, as long as you're connected with USB 3.0 on both ends, not just the Pixel end. The fingerprint scanner on the 6P is good. It's quick and responsive. I got very heavy criticism for comparing it to the iPhone's fingerprint scanner, so I won't bother this time. I will say that it's placed on the back and actually works really well. The Pixel has a better implementation, but it should do at the fact that it's newer and at this price range. It implements a feature that got me really excited, like a child on Christmas morning, and that is the fingerprint scanner swipe down. Yeah, okay, it's not the most amazing thing, but I love it. Both scanners are accurate, quick and rear mounted, and that's all I can really say. And when I say about the rear fingerprint scanner swipe down, I mean you can bring down your notification drawer and quick settings panel from there, which is super cool in my opinion. So in conclusion, the 6P has better speakers, a bigger and higher resolution screen, a better design IMO and a bigger battery. But the Pixel is faster, newer, has a slightly better fingerprint scanner, and comes in blue if you're lucky. I'd take the Pixel down to the speed, but I would love a blue one. But if we're talking about any phone, I'd happily take an iPhone 7 Plus over the two. That's just me. Oh, just to note, I'm not an Apple fanboy. I rock an S7 Edge, so yeah, I'm not an Apple fanboy. As always, thanks for watching, guys. Please like if you liked it, dislike if you disliked it, tell me your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe if you're new. Thank you for every ounce of support you guys give me. I've been Ryan Thomas, you've been a bunch of legends, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.